Right now, if you're lonely, your brain is doing something most people never find out about. Show someone a threatening image, and a lonely brain identifies it in 116 milliseconds. A connected brain takes over twice as long. You're not imagining that the world feels more dangerous when you're alone. Your brain has quietly rebuilt itself to survive it. And that rebuild is what's cutting your life short. Most people think loneliness is one thing. It's actually two. And they don't kill you the same way. There's the loneliness you feel the ache of sitting in a room with people and still feeling unseen. And there's the loneliness you're in the objective, measurable state of having almost no one to call. You'd assume the second one is worse. More isolation, more risk. Simple, but when researchers separated the two, feeling lonely raised the risk of early death by about 14%. Being genuinely isolated, regardless of how a person felt about it, raised that risk to 32%. Two different diseases, wearing the same name. So, which one is actually shortening your life? Stick with me, because the answer isn't the one you're expecting. Let's start at the smallest possible scale. Your genes. Isolated people show a specific, measurable gene signature. Researchers call it the conserved transcriptional response to adversity. In practice, it means your immune system quietly turns up inflammation and turns down your defenses against viruses. That sounds backwards. Until you remember that for most of human history, being cast out of the group didn't mean a quiet night in. It meant an open wound was probably coming. No group to defend you, no one to pull you back from the edge of the fire. Your body still runs on that setting. It's preparing you for a physical attack that, for you, right now is never going to come. That's just the genes. Now look at the hormones. Isolation acts on your body as a chronic stressor, the same category as a threat you can't escape. It disrupts your cortisol rhythm, and in women specifically, it dampens the ability of oxytocin to buffer that stress. That leaves them more exposed to disrupted sleep, emotional swings, and eventual burnout. Here's the part that should stop you. A 20-second hug from someone you trust can move those same hormone levels in real time. Not eventually, in the time it takes to hold on. Which brings us to the part of you that never clocks out. Your sleep. Using a device that tracks eyelid and muscle movement through the night, researchers found that lonely young adults slept just as long as everyone else, but far less deeply. More restless time. More waking moments they never consciously registered. Even asleep, alone, in a locked room, with no one watching, the body still hasn't gotten the memo that it's safe. Genes on alert. Hormones on alert. And now, even unconsciousness isn't off duty. And it turns out, this isn't just something happening in complicated human minds. Because when researchers looked at social isolation across other species, entirely different animals, the same pattern kept appearing. In mice bred into social hierarchies, the animals that ended up isolated at the bottom, subordinate, pushed to the edges, didn't just suffer psychologically. They developed measurable heart disease. Early stage arterial lesions, a cellular aging signature their dominant, socially integrated cage mates never showed. Their bodies were quite literally aging faster, and it traced back to their place in the group, not their diet, not any other factor. Even stranger. Go all the way down to ants, insects with a brain the size of a grain of sand and no capacity for anything you'd call an emotion. Isolate a single ant from its colony, and its body starts accumulating oxidative damage, cellular wear and tear faster than an ant left with its colony. Nothing attacked it, nothing threatened it. It was simply alone. And that alone was enough to start breaking its body down at the cellular level. If isolation can measurably damage a creature with no story it's telling itself, no fear of the future, No memory of what it's lost. This was never just a human sadness. It's something closer to a law of biology. And you happen to be a species complex enough to also feel it. Now bring it back to the organ that started this whole video. Your brain. In the largest analysis of its kind, over 600,000 people, across 21 long-term studies, researchers found that loneliness raises the overall risk of dementia by 31%. Broken down further, a 14% higher risk of Alzheimer's disease specifically, a 17% higher risk of vascular dementia, a 12% higher risk of cognitive impairment, even before any diagnosis of dementia at all. To put that in perspective, researchers found the size of that risk comparable to being physically inactive or smoking. Nobody puts loneliness on a warning label. Nobody screens for it at a doctor's visit the way they screen for blood pressure. But your brain appears to be quietly keeping score anyway. You've probably heard the story before. A small town called Roseto, Pennsylvania. 3 generations under one roof. Shared meals. A community so tightly bound together that, for decades, almost nobody there had a heart attack. It's one of the most repeated stories in psychology content. The lesson is always the same. Connection protects the heart, all on its own. It's also been quietly debunked. When researchers went back and re-examined the data, Roseto's heart disease rates turned out to be nearly identical to a comparable town the entire time. The magic wasn't there, or at least it wasn't measurable in the way the story claims. I'm not telling you this to take the hope away. I'm telling you because it points somewhere more useful than a fairy tale about a perfect town. Loneliness isn't cured by proximity to other bodies. It isn't solved by simply living near people or even living with them. What actually changes your biology is something more specific. But before we get there, there's a harder question underneath all of this. One most people watching are quietly wondering right now, is some of this just who you are? Were you always going to end up this way? Twin studies, comparing identical twins to fraternal twins raised in similar environments, have tried to answer exactly that. The estimate that keeps showing up across multiple independent studies, genetics account for roughly 48% of the difference in how lonely adults feel. Not all of it, just under half. Which means something most people never stop to consider. Statistically, over half of your loneliness was never written into you at all. It was built by circumstance, by moves, by breakups, by years that happened to you. Which means it can be unbuilt the same way it was built. Here's the cruelest part of all of this. Loneliness doesn't just make you feel bad. It makes you faster at noticing rejection than everyone else. That hair trigger threat detection from the beginning of this video, the 116 milliseconds it doesn't switch off in daily life. It runs underneath everything. So you misread a text that went unanswered for too long. A friend who seems a little distant. A joke that lands wrong in a group chat. And you pull back just slightly, just to protect yourself. Which makes you lonelier. Which makes the scanning worse. It's a loop with no natural exit built into it. The very system that's supposed to protect you from being hurt again is the same system that guarantees you will be, eventually, alone. And it doesn't stay contained to just you. Using 2 decades of data from one of the longest-running health studies ever conducted, researchers found that loneliness moves through a social network almost like a signal. It clusters. It spreads up to 3 people away from you. A friend of a friend of a friend can nudge your risk of loneliness without either of you ever meeting. The lonely aren't just isolated. They're often quietly pushed toward the edges of the group over time, which of course only spreads the loneliness further outward from there. You are not the only place this is happening. It's moving through the people around you right now, most of them completely unaware. If you assume this whole video was really about old age, about grandparents living alone, about people who've outlived their friends, that's the biggest myth in this entire topic. Adults between 18 and 34 report more loneliness than any other age group alive today. More than people in their 70s. More than people in their 80s. If you're watching this and you're young, this was never a preview of your future. It's describing your present. Here's the part that should give you something other than dread. Social pain and physical pain run through the same circuit in your brain. So closely linked that in controlled studies, a common over-the-counter painkiller measurably dulled the neural response to rejection. That's not a solution. Nobody is telling you to medicate loneliness away. But think about what it actually proves. The wound is real. It's physical. It's not a character flaw or a personality problem or something broken in you specifically. It's tissue, responding exactly the way tissue is built to respond. And tissue that can be wounded can also heal. Maybe the real reason loneliness shortens a life isn't the isolation itself. Maybe it's that a body kept on permanent alert was never built to also do the slow, quiet work of actually living, resting, trusting, healing, staying. It was built to survive one threat at a time. And for a lot of people watching this right now, it's been treating your whole life like one. If this explains something you felt for a long time, but never had the words, for there's more of this waiting for you.